All right, let's get the show on the road. It kind of felt like people got here a little bit earlier than usual, so I've been looking at the clock, wondering if my watch was behind, but no, we're on time. So welcome to the April edition of SeaRUG. My name's David Diarza. I'll be your host, and we've got our sponsor PPI here today, so big thank you to them, and I'll do a proper introduction here in a second. If you've been to these before, you know that I like to get off the podium here pretty quick and get to the meat of the presentation. And if you were here last month, you know very well that this is all just an attempt. You know, it's live television. Things can go wrong. We'll see. But I have a feeling that today we're actually in for a bit of a treat. And speaking of today, like I mentioned, PPI has bought us lunch and paid for the wonderful venue here, so thank you very much to the PPI folks that came over and brought a little bit of swag. Today we're trying something a little bit different, and I think that I mentioned this at the beginning of the year, but it bears repeating. In the past, as a Revit user group, we've had not even an unwritten, it was a written rule that things that you see here must be relevant to the Revit user when they get back to their desk without having to buy anything. Now, there's some pressures in the market, let's just call them the sales model for Autodesk has changed a little bit. You no longer rely on a VAR as much as you did in the past. Sorry. But it's the reality, as you know, the market's changing a bit. So we are diversifying a little bit. We are reaching out to groups that are not necessarily Revit-centric, but they're part of the ecosystem of the larger BIM conversation and talk to Revit really well and become really good tools in the workflow of the Revit user and of the AEC users in general. And I think today we're going to see an example of that with iConstruct. Now, I'll let Robert get into iConstruct. I won't spoil the show, but just to mention that it's something that works on top of Navisworks, which, if you've paid any attention to what I've been saying throughout the years here, is a product that I know and love as a builder. It's what I use more so than Revit. But it's all, like I said, part of this ecosystem of applications and of solutions that really speak to the larger picture. And this is a product that I really, really like. So I'm very excited to see the presentation today. And so I might as well let's get to that and not spend any more time babbling about what I care about up here. On top of PPI, I would just like to acknowledge the rest of our sponsors. We do this every month. You know, these are the folks up here that make this happen and make sure that you have wonderful lunch and best venue of any rug in the country by far. And it doesn't cost you a dime, thanks to these folks and to everybody else up here on the screen. So big thank you. And also always I like to mention everybody on the SeaRUG board. You know, we volunteer to do this. We get together. We try to drive the agenda a little bit and try to figure out what you're going to want to see, what the best direction is to take us as a group. And so far, I think that we've done a really nice job. So thank you to everybody on this list. And I've got a couple of Amazon gift cards to give away at the end, so don't go anywhere. We've got your RSVPs. Are all cut up, all the names are in there, and we'll pull a couple of names out of the hat at the end. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass it over to PPI. And Robert, I think, Tanya, are you coming up? Or? All right, Robert, you are up. Let me go ahead and minimize that and let you take it away.
All right, thanks a lot. Well, thanks, everybody. I'm definitely not a PowerPoint person. I just like getting into showing some software. So I want to just do a little background of what I'm going to show you here. So I'm going to show you a product called iConstruct, which is an add-on to Navisworks. Okay. The product was developed in Australia. It was down in Perth, Australia. It was a product we built for ourselves in-house. It was never intended to be a product that was going to be sold commercially. It just gave us a competitive edge. We were a BIM consulting, detailing, engineering firm based down there. Local resellers saw what we were actually doing and said, hey, would you guys be interested in packaging this thing up and trying to sell it? So that's kind of how it came about. We've been selling it down in Australia for about 8 or 9 years. Really been going heavy here in the States for about 4 or 5 years. We've got some past 2 years has been very good to us. A lot of big companies. We've got 20 of the top 25 GCs. We get a lot of architectural firms. It's a product for kind of anybody. Anybody that's actually got Navisworks and has a use for it, then iConstruct can go on top of that. We do have some things. I know this is a Revit user group, so I'm going to try to show some of the things why a Revit user would want. So some of the main things that Revit users want buy our product for is to be able to take a Navisworks model and export it out as an IFC file or a DWG, and so they can take it into Revit to see any clashes and stuff like that. So that's one of the big things. We can add data to our models. So we can take a database, a Kobe data, whatever it is, and write that information back into Navisworks. We could then just push that data straight into Revit as new properties back into your Revit model. And then also with clash detection, another thing about me is I actually own a company that develops Revit tools, and PPI sells those as PPI Revit Briefcase. I know probably some of you guys have those. I actually own that company. And my guy quickly threw together a tool for me today. It's not quite ready, but where we can actually take the clash data out of Navisworks and actually see all this information inside Revit. So I'll give you a little sneak peek at that thing, but anybody that's got these, the PPI Revit Briefcase, you'll automatically get this tool also. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start out here. I'm going to bring up Navisworks here. And this is a model, like I say. I'm going to just kind of go through a standard demo, but I will try to show you some of this stuff to be used with Revit. iConstruct is made up of about 40 different tools. The number one reason why people buy this product is because of clash detection. Okay? If you've got Navisworks managed, you probably already do clash detection. We just take it to the next level here. So I'm going to kind of start out here and just kind of show you what we can do with that. So if I go over here to Clash Detective, actually I'm going to open up a different model here. Let me just open up this model. Sorry, no, I'm going to go back to the model. I forgot what I was going to do. There you go. They look the same. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come over here to Clash Detective, and I'm going to run a test, structural versus HVAC. Okay, I get 432 clashes. It's not a lot, but you'll get the idea of what we can actually do here. So that's all Navisworks. Navisworks does a really good job of its clash detection, finding the clashes, but doesn't do a great job at helping you manage those clashes. That's where we come into it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring in some solids. If you're using Revit, these would be rooms or masses, okay? I've got an AutoCAD drawing here that I'm going to bring in, so I'm just going to change this over to AutoCAD. I'm going to bring in some zones. Sorry, I need to pin that drawing, sorry. Pinned it. So zones. These are just solids, AutoCAD solids. You can see there are 4 solids. I want to break this model up into these 4 different zones because I want to separate my clashes depending on where they fall within the model. Like I say, if you're using Revit, they could be rooms or masses, anything that becomes a solid. Scope boxes, you can pull those in there too. Okay? So each of these solids are on their own layer here. So you can see there it says layer zone 3. This is on the item tab. There's zone 4. It's also on the item tab. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn around. I'm going to create a selection set from this. Okay? So I'm just going to call this one zones. Okay? That's it. And I'm going to hide it. So that's basically all I'm doing. I'm appending in the model, and I'm creating a selection set from it. So, like say, if it's a Revit, you grab all those rooms, create a selection set. Now, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go over to my standard tools. I'm going to go to Clash Manager, and I'm going to select my test from the list. And I'm going to expand these out in a moment, but the first thing I'm going to do is go to Options. So, in Options here, if I go to the Advanced tab, we have the option here, and I see my model's actually been changed to units to meters, so let me just quickly change that real quick. I do a lot of demos in Europe, so I'm always having to change my units. All right, let's try her again. just go into options here. All right, so what we have here is the ability to group your clashes within a certain distance of each other. So if you ever get in that situation where the pipe going through a duct, it's going in one side, out the other, you get two clashes, when it's really just one clash. But then all of a sudden that pipe has insulation around it, so now you got two more. Then it's got a center line, you got two more. So like in that one area, you got like 6, 8, 10 clashes. Okay, that's a lot to look at when you got 10,000 clashes. So what this does is we can group all those clashes within a certain distance of each other. I'm going to say 2 feet. Then down here at the bottom, we've got zone grouping. So basically I'm saying use this selection set called zones, and I want to break up my model based on the layer that you find on the item tab, where I did the zone 4, 3, so on. All right, so that's it. So I'm just going to go refresh here. And so let's go in, and I'll select my test. There just to make sure it did populate it. All right, so I'm going to expand out all this information. So there's all my clashes. What I'm going to do is now look at ways to group this. So if I right-click on this, I'm going to go into what's called Column Chooser. This brings up a little customization box. Inside here, you see all the different properties inside Navisworks right now that you can use to help you sort or group these clashes. CR1 means the first element in the clash. So in my case, it's structural. Another way to look at it is everything that's on your selection A side here, everything selection A is considered CR1. Everything on selection B is considered CR2. All right, and so you can see there's a lot of properties in there for CR1. So there's like the data on the element tab, your document tab, and I bring this on down. You can see all the item tab, all that. Keep going down, you're getting into CR2s, and then all the way at the bottom, I've got things like grid level, grid lines, proximity group, and zone group. So let's do this first. I want to break up my clashes based on the zone that they fall within. I just take zone group, drag it and drop it, and now I've grouped all my clashes based on the zone. So if I stopped right here and pushed these back into Navisworks, I've taken 432 clashes down to 4. 4 groups, that's all it is. Okay, well, I want to break it down even farther than that. Let's go by the level. Let's go grid level, drag and drop it. And now you'll see here, I've got zone 3, all the different levels of the clashes. Let's expand those out. There you can see all the clashes. I want to break it down even farther. Let's go HVAC, the system name for the HVAC. So that would be CR2. So I go and find that property for the HVAC. Here it is. CR2, system name. I'll drag and drop it. And now you can see here, it's broken down by all the different systems. Let's expand that out. Okay, you'll see there one supply air 164. I've got 11 clashes in this group. Okay, well, let's see how close they are together. So now let's just go in the bottom here, and I'll grab proximity group. I'll drag it and drop it. And now that system, SA164, has actually 3 sets. There was 11 there before, now it's down to 3. And those will be like the duplicates one. So if I look at this one here, if I move this around in the back, you'll see that there's quite a few clashes in there. But if I highlight the one initial group, it's really just that. That one group here actually has about 8 clashes right there. But it's really only 2 items that are clashing. Okay? You can keep dragging and dropping this. All right, so then when I'm done with this, I can create viewpoints over here if I want to, but the main thing here is to save it. Give this a layout. I don't want to have to go through and set this up every single time. So you'd come up and you give this a name. So like here I've got level and system name. I can select it. Now it's broken down by level and system name. I can go in there, just zone 4 grouping, all that good stuff. All right, so then when I'm done with this, I'm going to highlight this test. I'm going to right-click. And I'm going to go create clash detective group. So this is actually pushing it back into Navisworks. I started out with 432 clashes. Now, I'm down to 132 clashes. I've reduced it down to 25%. And this is what we're seeing consistently with our customers. You know, they're taking 10,000 clashes and immediately down to 2,000. Well, 2,000 is still a lot, but that's a lot more manageable. Try to go through in a day compared to 10,000 of them. Okay? If I go to my results here, you can see here I've got level 6 SA94, level 5, so we have full control over the naming of these. Okay? So now, how would this benefit in the Revit side of it too? So this is the little sneak peek of a little tool that I have, and it's not working right, so bear with me. He just whipped it together for me last night because he'd actually had a preview of it before, and he hadn't got back onto it. So let's say here's a model here. So we actually have, and this is the Revit briefcase here, and I can show you anything on that here later on, but this is a new one he just did for me. It's called Clash here. If I actually click on this, it's going to bring up a dialog box, and I can go out and load the XML file of the clashes here. So I'm going to just grab this XML file. It says user group. I'm going to go open. And so this is actually showing you all those clashes that it came out of Navisworks. Now, like I say, this isn't a fully functional one right now, but it will be in about a week or two when I actually put him back on it. But basically, you can go in and assign people to these. You can put in comments and stuff. But the idea here is you're basically just going to go through and click on an item here, a clash, and it's going to go and find that clash for you. And it'll isolate just the two objects that are actually clashing. So then you can go in and look at fixing it. Now, we do have some options in here, too, to where you'll be able to, keep everything turned on, just make it grayed out if you wanted to, or just keep everything so it's the same as. Changing colors, things like that. This isn't, like I say, it's not complete, but this is something some of our users came to us and said, hey, we want a way to be able to find these clashes in Revit once we got them in Navisworks, okay? But like I say, this isn't a fully functional, but that's basically what it's going to end up doing for you, okay? And then you'll be able to also, if you make any changes on those, be able to push those back into Navisworks also. So now I'm going to jump back into this. I want to actually show you some reporting. So that's one of the other big things for us is the reporting. Navisworks isn't great with its reporting, and that's where we come into it. So if I come back over here, we have our own report engine built in here. So if I come down in here to go create clash view report, I'm going to grab this one here, and I'll just grab this first group. This is kind of like a crystal report, so you can go in and customize this any way you want. This is just an example of what I'm going to show you here. This one's going to show me where the clash is at in elevation, show me where the clash is at in plan view, and then it gives me a detail of the clash itself. I can pull any of the data about the two clashing objects into this report also. So the name of the two items, the coordinate that they're clashing, the elevation, you name it, I can pull it in there. These locators do move around depending on where that clash is at. So you can see it's moved around up there, okay, down there. We can do bar charts and pie charts and all sorts of stuff. Okay? All right, so that's the clash detection. That is by far and away the number one reason why people buy it. Okay, number two reason why they buy it, which is not really great for us anymore, is our BIM flow, okay? BIM flow allows us to script every single thing that we do, and it can be run overnight. So clash detection is a big one. That's why I always start with that one. So with clash detection, a lot of people are spending days, a week long, maybe 2 or 3 days worth of work on this, going through the clashes and grouping and stuff. So what we can do is script all those, because it's the same thing every single week. Oh, I got new models. I have to go back through this stuff all over again. So what I can do here, if I go here to workflow management, I'm going to right-click and create a new one here, and I'm going to go SeaRUG. And I'm going to right-click on that now and go design workflow. Okay, this is just going to bring up a workflow designer here. Oh, sorry, I can't. Sorry, I reinstalled this thing. I can't show it. Basically, it's a drag and drop process here. Mine's blank at the moment. I forgot about that. But I can drag and drop all my start Navisworks, do my clash detection and stuff. I can show you one of the jobs here. So for instance, this job here. So this is a job, and like I say, all of these things would be present over here right now, but I've just loaded this new version on this morning, a beta. But basically what I've got here is starting Navisworks, opening up a model, okay? We can do a few other things in here. We're selecting different views. We're auditing our model, breaking it up by different levels. We're doing the clash detection. We're exporting out new models. on each level. This thing here, this takes 15 hours to run, okay? It doesn't look like a lot, but this once took 3 guys almost 40 hours combined, okay? We're now doing this thing overnight. So a lot of our customers, if you've got SQL Server or SQLite, you can set all these BIM flows up and say, hey, run this BIM flow every Monday night, this one every Tuesday night, or whatever it is. And it does all this work. We've got one company down in California that's got 3 licenses, and they're on dedicated machines, and those 3 machines, that's all they do all day long, all night long, is run different BIM flows. They set up these BIM flows and running for all their different projects. No one actually uses those machines, they're just doing it. They tell us they could buy a new license every single night for the money that they save. Do they? No, but, you know. But it is a huge time saver. And like I say, I know we've got a few customers here in the auditorium here. You can definitely, once you get into it, it's huge. All right, so a couple other things here. So I'm going to jump out of this. I'm going to jump into another model here. This is a Tekla model, okay? And I don't know if anybody ever works with Tekla models or not, but this is the way a Tekla model comes in. It's got this not in use, undefined, 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 and then it goes truss. Everything highlights. Underneath that, I've got all this angles and braces and all sorts of stuff in here. I don't like the way this thing is organized. We have a tool called Reconstruct where I can actually export out a model as a brand new NWD, and I can reconfigure the model. Get a lot of customers, you guys are Revit users. The ones that aren't, they actually configure the Revit files because Revit is, when it comes into Navisworks, it's got so many darn layers in here. And we can actually turn around and say, hey, let's configure that and take out a lot of those layers. I just want like 2 or 3 layers. So I'm going to run one here. You just remember this tree view here. If I come over to Reconstruct, I'm going to run this Tekla. It's going to export it out as a brand new NWD. So it's going to go out, and why I'm doing it is to reconfigure the tree. Okay, this works with any file. I'm just using Tekla as an example here, but any file whatsoever. Okay, so remember that tree? Go and grab this new file. You can see it looks exactly the same, but now look at the tree view. I've now grouped all my angles, my beams, my braces together. Expand those out, and they're all under that. Okay? It's got the actual name, where before it actually just said body. It didn't actually tell me anything. Okay? So you can reconfigure any file whatsoever. Another reason why users are using this tool is taking just a portion of it. I know some people in here are probably using 360 glue, but sometimes you get these models and they're just so big, can't hardly even take them up into glue or pass them over to somebody else to look at them on a iPad or something. But here, I can actually use the same tool, Reconstruct, and I can actually export out just a portion of my model, create me a brand new NWD file from it. Now I've got a customer right now with the Revit model. Once again, they've got this massive big Revit model that they bring in, and it's too big. It's over 1 gig once it comes into Navisworks. They've got scope boxes, so they create a whole bunch of scope boxes. We can also use the Reconstruct tool, grab every scope box, and create a new NWD of every single scope box that's actually in the model. Okay, so now if I go and open up this new file here, here it is. That's it. It physically sliced the items exactly where that section box was. All right, so next thing I want to show you is being able to add more data to the model, and then we can look at pushing that back into Revit. Okay, so let me go in. I'm going to open up a different model here. This is just an HVAC model just to show you what we can do. All right, so here, this is a Revit model too. I've got a system here, SA4. I've got item and timeliner here. I don't really have any data at that system level. If I expand it out, now I've got all these individual items under here. Well, these items have tons of information, okay? A lot more than you probably need. A lot of people complain because they've got to jump around. They've got to go to here, they've got to go to there. They're all over the place. So what we can do is we can create a user-defined tab and pull information from other locations. So I've got this SA4 here. I'm going to go to Integrator. I'm going to run this one called HVAC Standard. You'll see there it says 1 group and 62 items have been selected. Just watch these 2 tabs here, Item and Timeliner. If I go OK, there's my new tab called iConstruct Hospital. Now I've got the system name, system type, level, and work set. At the system level, I pulled that information from lower levels. If I go to an individual item, I also have that tab, and I've got the ID, the name, the category, and all this. Okay. Now, if anybody ever uses this publish command, there's an option down here that says prevent object property export. What a lot of our customers are doing now is using this tab, pulling in all the FM data before they pass this model over to the owner. So they'll bring in all their facilities management information. They go in here to publish, and if you click on that and publish it, it won't export out all these other tabs. You'll actually get a new tab that's just the item tab in it. Sorry, a new model with just the item tab, the user defined tab, and then this timeliner tab. A lot smaller model, a lot cleaner model to pass off to the owner when you're done. If I click, what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to add in some more information in here. So let's go into Standard Tools, and I'm going to go to Pen Data. And I'm going to create one here. It's called, this one's iConstruct Hospital. I'm going to expand this out. I've actually got 2 of them already in here. 3. I'm going to load this one. So basically, I'm creating a new property called Status. I'm going to say the property value is installed. I'm going to put it on the iConstruct Hospital tab. You can call it whatever you want. It's going to apply it to all the items and groups, and it's just a text value. And I'm actually going to go ahead and change the color of it too. So let's just go green here, and I'll save. I'm going to go, let's go always over right there. Let's go save. I'm going to grab the received. I'm going to load it. Same thing. I'm going to change the color of it to maybe red. And I'll always overwrite, and I'll save it. All right? And I'm just going to OK out of this or close it. So now I can select anything in my model. You'll see I do not have the iConstruct tab here. I go up here to Pen Data and say, well, yep, that's installed. And you'll see now I've got the new tab and the status in here. And then it's also iConstruct here. There I've got a property in there. See, now it's green. I'm going to go in here and say, well, that's been received. And there it is. It's red. But if I select on that, you'll actually see I've got the tab in there, the status, and it's received. So you can do this with anything. You can add in any properties you want. Now we're also I'm going to do it here in a moment where I take a database. But now let's look at how we get those properties back into Revit. So if I'm going to open up a Revit here, this is the 2016. I've got 17 on there, but let's go here. I'm going to open up a different model here. So let me go in here. And I'm going to open up this architectural model. Okay, so I've just opened up an architectural model. And then in Revit here, I'm going to go and open up the same architectural model. This is the Revit file. So this is all going to be based on the element ID. So if we find the same element ID in Navisworks as it is in Revit, we can add those properties to it. So for instance here, let's go back here to View. All right, so if I could just go ahead and I'll just select on something in here. Okay, so there's this wall here. I don't have the properties that I want. So if I go into Navisworks, let's just go back to Home here. I'm going to select a few items here. So let's just go these 2 here, and I'm going to say they're installed. And I'm going to put iConstruct on there too. So now if I select one of these objects, you're now going to see I've got the iConstruct Hospital tab with a status and a contractor. If I go to this one, I don't have that tab there yet, so I'm going to go ahead and grab 2 items. I'm going to say iConstruct, and I'm going to go Received. So now if I go to this one, now you'll see it's contractor is iConstruct and status is Received. Now, once I've added those properties, I now want all those to go back into, so typically what our customers are doing is with statusing. They're actually in the field, they're putting some statuses on different things. So if I go to Revit now, when you actually get iConstruct, it'll actually install a menu in Revit. So iConstruct 2017, I'm going to click on this, iConstruct Server, and I'm basically going to start it. Okay? So it's listening. We're basically it's listening to Navisworks now. So now if I go into Navisworks, I'm going to go ahead and select these items that I have. So let's go grab these. There. Down to standard tools, we have an option down here to Revit Client. I click on that, it'll come up and show me the different properties that I can push back. These are only the user-defined properties. So there's the contractor and the status. So I'll say, yep, can you do both of those? And just go submit. And we'll come back in here. Let's go grab a wall here. Hopefully this does. And let's go down here. And there's the contractor as iConstruct and the status is received. Okay? So any property whatsoever that you add into your model, if it's a new property, then we can push that back into the model there. Okay? So let me go back to Navisworks. Let me go back into my original model. So this one here now, I'm back into this original model. So I'm going to go back to Sets. I'm going to go to some lights. I'm going to select a bunch of lights here. All right, so all these lights, if I select on one of the lights, I have this iConstruct Hospital tab. I've got a user-defined tab in here. Okay? We can only write to a user-defined tab. So there I've got the ID, the name, and a category, and that's it. I've got a database that I want to write more information back into the model here. So if I grab my lights, I go over here to what's called Data Link, and I've got a lighting supplier, and I'm going to go ahead and select it. This is just an Excel spreadsheet, but it can be an Access database, a SQL server, you name it. I can actually get that data in here. So it's going to go through. It found 1,269 lights. I select a light now. You'll actually see in here I've got a supplier and a cost. So it all came from a database. This is where a lot of our customers are using the statusing. Okay? So they're actually adding the statuses like I did earlier. They would export those out into an Excel spreadsheet or some kind of a database. And then when they get the new model, they don't have to put that data back in there. They just say, hey, run this and add the data back in through the spreadsheet. And typically, they would use the BIM flow to do all that. So now that I've got all that in there, I can get some reports out of this also. So that's another big reason that people buy this is just plain reporting, grabbing anything. So there's a whole bunch of doors. Let's go over here to export data, and it's called, I got one here set up called Door Schedule. Okay. Go out there and exports this out. So basically, all customizable. I've just got it broken down by the level, your different types of doors in here, and then giving you a count of how many doors on there. Once again, completely customizable. You know, a lot of people with Revit, you're probably going to do most of this stuff in Revit. What a lot of my customers that are Revit users are using it for is when they, in that bidding process or whatever, they might get a model from somebody that's not actually a Revit model. So they can actually open up in Navisworks and run a bunch of reports and get, work on their estimating on it. Okay? But you can get like total length of like ducting, how many elbows, you name it. If the properties are in the model, we can use the software to pull it out. Okay? All right, so that's the reporting. Other things, let's go in here. Let's look at some color coding. This, hide unselected. So there's a whole bunch of steel. Kind of the same thing with data linking. We have the ability to be able to take any kind of a database, Excel spreadsheet in this case, and I'm just going to link it up to this steel, and it's going to color code it based on the status that it finds within that database. And we create a little legend here. Okay, so there's your steel fabrication tracking. Everything you're seeing in red there hasn't even been fabricated yet, but all the stuff you're seeing in green's actually been installed so far. It's a nice tool because if you see anything in here like it's gray, there's no color here gray, that means it's not in the database. You're kind of auditing your model, checking to see if something's in the database or not. They're just talking to each other, but it's not a live link, okay? And we purposely don't want it to be a live link, so yeah. Yep. But we could do it. I mean, like, so if we actually had, we could take that where I did data linking a moment ago, I could take that database and write the statuses in on everything and then use a tool called Audit that would say, now, color code it based on whether it's installed and stuff like that. So you have two options really in there. Yeah. In regards to that, I'm going to open up another model here. Let me just go into, I've got a PDMS model. Give you an example here. And I'm going to load a different profile. So a profile is really just different setups. So you might have a different setup for a different project, a different company you're working with, or whatever. And this is all the information here is a profile. So what I'm going to do here first is I'm going to do a little bit of data linking. I'm going to add what's called work packages to each one of these items in here. Okay, so basically, all I've done there is just added in that work package number, just using the data linking. So everything has a work package. Now that I have that, I'm going to use a tool called Audit. So Audit allows me to break up my model based on certain properties and creates viewpoints for me. Once I have those viewpoints, I can use the Reconstruct tool to say export them out. Where I showed you that BIM flow earlier that says takes 15 hours, that BIM flow loads 178 different models, okay, mainly from Revit. It loads those models up from all the different subcontractors. Then we use the Audit tool and break up the model by the levels. So this will create me viewpoints of every single level. Then we use the Reconstruct tool to say export each of those viewpoints out as its own brand new NWD. So now I've got a smaller model and I've got everything on level 1, 2, 3. Then I take that, we open those back up and run the clash detection, the reporting, the color coding, the status tracking, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, all in that one BIM flow. It'll do all that stuff. All right, so now that I have that, I am going to do this audit here. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, can you break up my model based on the work package? So if I go here to views, I have no views at the moment. So I'll select the model. I'm just going to go work package here. And it's gone through and it says audit complete. Now if I go back to viewpoints, here you got audit, work pack, expand it out. There's all the different work packages. Okay, any property whatsoever. Yes?
Yeah, so quick question. So a lot of what you're showing, somebody like me looks magical.
It is.
But I know very well that that button that you have on there to call WP, you had to create that. And somebody's had to go and decide what part of this model is in work package 1, what part of this model is in work package 2. Can you kind of show behind the factory a little bit?
Absolutely.
How we set those things up?
Yep. That's right. Yep. Yeah. So basically out of the box, I'm going to clear this here for you. So I'm going to clear this. So out of the box, this is what you get. You get what are called standard tools, and you get what's called general configuration. Standard tools are tools you just use. There's no real setup required other than the reporting, okay? General configuration are things that you configure for your own data. Everybody's data is different. We can't give you something out of the box, basically, okay? We're more than willing to help you. But in this situation in here, so what I've done is I loaded a profile. So I'm going to load the one that I've got here. And when I load this, it's all going to appear. And this stuff is all appeared because of what I've done down here. So I did the data linking. So let's go in here to my, where's my data linker here? I did that work package. So I've got one in here, apply work packages. So if I load this, basically I'm going to select an item in here. And you'll see I've got this standard data tab. So basically what I'm doing here is, actually this is saying its linking attribute is the item, okay? So basically I'm saying I'm grabbing an Excel spreadsheet. This is the Excel spreadsheet that I'm grabbing. I'm going to apply this to the groups, not the individual items. those items are already grouped together, so I'll use that. I'm using sheet number 1 out of my database. My target attribute is always a user-defined tab, so that's the standard data. I'm going to write the new information onto that tab. Then I'm saying always overwrite it. My linking attribute, I'm saying go to the item tab, and if the name in the database, whatever that name means in the database, if that matches this name here, can you please write in this property that's in my database? Okay?
So then you would have to create an Excel sheet that has the name and the work package. You would have to be able to export. You can use another tool to export out the names.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and we do have a new tool that's basically out. I can't show it to you or whatever, but we have a new tool called WorkPack. What's it called? WorkPack Generator or something like that. We've got a guy down in Houston right now working with KBR down there, working on it. So WorkPack Creator. So tools to actually help you be able to grab things in the model and apply a work package to it. But it's a database driven, so other people can be doing it on the cloud and all this kind of stuff. Yep. 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 And you don't have to do it. You wouldn't have to go back out to the spreadsheet. It's cleaner, so you do. I mean, you grab all this data. You're adding the work package information like I just did from the database. But the idea there is if you get a new model coming in, oh, I have to do that all over again. That's where you're taking the database, say, write that data back in there. I don't want to have to pick those things all over because, as you know, you will get a new model, you know? Yeah, every Friday. So these are these work packages here that were all created, all right? So some other little tools that we have in here. I can take anything in my model. Let's just go grab this. I'm going to grab that, and we can come over here. We can actually add some labels in here too. So you can go in, and I'm just going to do a few things in here. You can do more than one at a time too. That one didn't have anything in it. Okay. So let's go in here. So this is, I can move this around. So we can move these labels, get it looking right. And then I'm going to come up here and say, generate a save viewpoint and clear those marks away. So they're now gone. But if I go into this view down here, you'll actually see the labels come back. So we can throw on some dimensions and stuff like that. That company I was telling you about down in California that's got the 3 licenses is doing the automation. What they're actually doing is all their prefab work. They're generating all of their prefab sheets for bending of pipes and everything. And they tell us, and I can't show you their presentation or whatever, but what used to take them 15 minutes to do to create a prefab sheet is now down to 1.5 seconds using iConstruct. Now they've done some of their own customizing, don't get me wrong, but they're using our tools. Basically, all they've done is customize the reporting engine. So, hey, can you go in and do this, this, and this all the time? But now that I've got that, I can go ahead and generate some reports. So let's go down here to Standard Tools. Let's go create a view report. It's not a clash view. It's just a view report. And I'm going to go in. I'll grab that one. Let's just grab a few of these things in here. Let's go 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know. Let's go run. This is going to look similar to the clash view report that I showed you earlier. The main difference is this also going to list all the different line numbers. So this is the view here. It's listing all the different line numbers there and all the pieces of equipment, showing still where this is located in elevation and plan view. You come on down in here. So there's all your line numbers and your pieces of equipment. Once again, all customizable. Throw in your own logos, addresses, whatever. But you don't even have to have these views if you don't want them. Okay, so that's the audit tool. Now I want to look at exporting a model out as a DWG. So let's see if I've got that. Let's go in and open here. Let's go back. Let's see if I've got that Revit model I had a moment ago. NWF here. All right, so we can create DWGs and IFC files out of Navisworks. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn off some of this data that I have in here. And let me just load this profile again. We got another tool in here to where I can, it's called Select Similar, so you can customize these up. I'm just going to say, hey, grab everything with the exact same category, and then I'll just turn that off. Let's hide that, and let's just grab this tree, everything in the same category. Whoops. I don't know why that's not, let's go same name then. That's weird. What's that? I don't know why that's, oh well. We'll create the trees. Actually, here's planting. Let's turn it off that way. There you go. That's easier. All right, so let's. We're going to create two. We'll do an IFC and a DWG. So let's go in here, General Configuration. I'm going to come down here to Smart DWG. Okay, so I'm going to give this thing a name here. I'm going to call it DWG SeaRUG. You can export it out as meshes or solids. A new feature we just added to is you can create a 2D drawing out of the 3D model. So if you set this to plan view, it'll create you a 2D model or 2D drawing of that model. I'm going to export it out as solids. I'm going to export it out as imperial. We can go in here, the layer that you want to do, I'm just going to say let's go to the item tab and the name, whatever it is. Okay? So I'm going to say item is the layer I want to do, and then I'm going to say the name, so that was planting. I only want to export whatever I have selected, or you could do visible. And then I'm going to say, can you keep the colors of what I've got? And you have the option here, do you want to keep all the data that's in the model? You could do that. Or you could keep just the user-defined data. So if you've created your own user-defined tab, push data onto it, when you created the new model, that's all that would go out with it. Okay, so I can say keep this data here, and you can also keep groups. I'm just going to go save. There it is, and so I'll close it. All right, so now I'm going to grab all the data here. Let's select it. Let's come over here to Smart DWG, the one I just created there, DWG SeaRUG, and let's just go in here. Create this out. So it's going to go out, and it's going to export out this model here. Now, believe me, if you've got a big, massive model, it will take some time. This is going to go through fairly quick. It's a small model here, but once again, that's why we came up with the BIM flow. You know, a lot of these tasks take hours. I mean, if you've got a gig model in here in Navisworks, the DWG and the IFC file is going to be a lot bigger than a gig, I'll tell you that. Navisworks really compresses it. All right, so there's the DWG. So let's look at the IFC file in here. So let's go down here. Let's go down to Smart IFC. Okay, it looks a little different. I'm going to select a 2x3. We can also do a 2x3 or a 4. Some programs can't read IFC4 yet. Okay, I'm not sure if Revit can. Don't know. So I'm going to do 2x3. I'm going to create a new one. And if I stopped right there, it's just going to export it out. That's what a lot of people want. They just want to see it in their Revit model just so they can see where their clashes are or something like that. If I want to, I can add more properties to it, which I'll do here in just a second. I'm just going to save this and close it. So I'm going to create this model out now as an IFC. So there's my new one, IFC export. I'll select it, fill in all the project information, and I'll go ahead and export this one out. So this one's going to be... let's go in here. Let's go. Okay. And go save. So this is going to export out the IFC file. IFC file will be probably at least 3 times the size of whatever the Navisworks model was. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Okay. So if I go in here now, let's go into Revit. Let's see if I can. Let's do the IFC file first. Let's see what it looks like. Let's see. Okay, once again, all I did was just export the data out. There's not going to be really any geometry with it or any data associated to it. And there's your model here. So there it is. Okay. So any model that's in Navisworks, I can turn around and export that out as an IFC so you can bring it into Revit. Like I say, most of the time what people are wanting it for is they're getting a Tekla model or something like that. You know you got clashes. I want to bring that in there just so you can see it. If they only send you an NWD, it's kind of hard to get it into Revit as an NWD. So this just gives you that ability to do that. Okay, so one other thing on the IFC here is I'm going to open up show you how to map it. So if you really want these properties, if it's a pipe, I want it to be a pipe in Revit. Okay. In order to do that, you need to map it. So let me just back out of this, and I'll just show you this. So let's grab in here NWD. This is a model out of CADWorks. Okay, so this just got a whole bunch of pipes and elbows and fittings, stuff like that. So I want to take that so I can take it into Revit, but I also want things to be mapped. Pipes to know they're a pipe, elbows to elbows. If I come down here to General Configuration, let's go back to my IFC tools. I'm going to do a 2x3 again. This one's going to be mapping, I'm going to call it. So what I'm going to do here is I want to add some properties here. So let's just grab this data here, and I'm going to say get NW props. This shows me all the properties of the data I've selected. So when you export this out, export out all this CADWorks information, all the AutoCAD data, whatever you want. So there's the CADWorks. It's going to give the line number and all that. Okay, so if I stop there, it would export out the geometry and the data, but it's not mapped. It still doesn't know it's a pipe. So I need to do that. So how I do that is I go in here and I do some mapping. So if I come down here, I've got IFC pipe. I'm going to say, yeah, I got some pipe here, and I'm going to use this selection set that I've got set up for pipes. Then I'll go up here to fittings, and I've got some bends. Let's go in here, and I'll grab some elbows. And then I've got some connectors. Let's go in, and I've got a flange set up there. Let's go down to a junction. Let's put in T's. Okay, so on and so forth. So you'd map these out. Okay, so I'll save it, and we'll exit. So now I'm going to export this one out one more time. Let's go here. It's mapping. IFC always exports out whatever is shown on screen here. So this one's going to be SeaRUG mapping. I'm going to go save. All right, so it's going to take a little bit longer. This is a little different model here. And I'm going to open this one up into Revit now. Let's go back over here. Open IFC. And because this one's mapping, you'll see that it takes a little bit longer to come up because it's going to recognize that it is a pipe, it is an elbow, a fitting or a valve or whatever it is. Now, I don't know what you can do with it once it's in there. I mean, I don't know if you can start, if it's a pipe, whether you can start attaching it, attaching other pipes to it or what it is, but it does come in as a pipe, but you'll see here in a second what I'll show you. Almost done. While this is doing it, some other things that we've got out or are coming also. We've got a model compare tool in here where we can compare model one day to the next, not only geometry but data. So you can open up two Revit models and just quickly do a check, and it'll create you selection sets of what's all been added, what's been deleted, any property that's actually changed, so we can do that. Let me go here. So here is my model. If I select on this, you will actually see it is a pipe. So it does know it's a pipe. It's a generic kind of but it's got all the data in there associated to it. Okay? An elbow should actually recognize as an elbow if I did it. That one's the wrong one. Pipe fitting there. Okay, so all the data is there. So like I was saying, we can do model compare. That's a new tool out. We got a brand new tool called Room View Creator, so you can take any Revit model with all your rooms in there, and it'll create you viewpoints of every single room that's in your Revit model. Then you can actually add barcodes to every single room. So then you can go out and scan that barcode, and it'll take you right to that location in the Navisworks model. So those are two things that are actually going to be out. I mean, I've got them on my machine, but they're not officially released yet. And then zone tools, where I created those zones earlier with the clash detection. What I can also do is I can add properties to every single thing that falls within that zone. So, like say, if it's zone 1 or whatever, I can add the word zone 1 to every single item that's actually in there. That's about it with the iConstruct. And about a quarter to, I think that's when I was supposed to about wrap it up here. So questions, anything that I might have shown you, anything else you want to see? Questions? Quiet group. All right. Yep. And I apologize because I'm not a Revit expert either, so you're not a Navis, I'm not either. But so here's this, so what we do here is right here, we've created this text file here. If you open that up, it actually comes up and it says it's a Revit shared parameter file. Yep. Yeah, but like I say, we can do a lot more. It's funny because, like I say, I own a company that we develop Revit tools, and I work for this company that's the Navis tools. The Navis guys don't know a lot about Revit. They did a pretty good job with that, but we're starting to lean on my team with the Revit to do a little bit more. Everybody's been wanting me to create a Revit file out of Navisworks, but that's a big beast to be able to do. And yep. There's videos out there, so if you go to your YouTube channel, you just type in iConstruct YouTube, there's videos of everything. If you download the trial, there's also a user little manual here. I'm actually in talks right now with a company to develop a lot of training material, because that's what we need. We need a lot more of that, so more that you can do it, because I'm a one man at the moment getting around and doing some training. So we're in talks with a couple companies about producing a lot more training videos, tutorials, everything out there. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Anything else? All right. You want your slide back up, or? Oh, thank you.
I'll put the slideshow back up.